Okay, we are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to discuss the latest news and rumors all off season long in Mets land. Welcome back to Mets Weekly. Before we get into everything, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for weekly episodes of our show that are regularly recorded every Monday night, typically at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. For those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live, as well as multiple videos that we like to post throughout the week, all off season long. For those of you in the live chat right now, we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns. If you feel like you're being ignored, you're not. We will star them, talk about them throughout the show. This is more of a mailbag type of stream because it's more of a pop-up type of stream. So you most likely will not be ignored as much as you usually are during the podcast. So I apologize if we don't get to your comments during those shows. But make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok. Future content over there. For our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version that goes up at 9 a.m. the following day that our podcasts are recorded. So without further ado, let's get into the breaking news. I'm joined by Evan once again for a pop-up stream for some news here. Ryne Stanek is back on a one-year contract. It's actually pretty funny because Ryne Stanek was wearing number 55 for us when he came here. Last time I think you were on here, it was
Griffin Canning.
It was Griffin Canning who was supposed to wear 55. So I guess we're just swapping these out. I guess it's poetic like that. Kind of as poetic as our other team, which is really funny on the other end. But we're not here to talk about that. But anyways, for those of you who don't know Evan, he does a show called Mets Central. I'll make sure to put the links in the description afterwards. That's exactly what I forgot. And of course, I'm sure you're watching him on his platforms as well, on Twitter. Make sure to go follow his podcast co-host, Matt, as well. But Ryne Stanek is back in the Mets bullpen, and it inches closer and closer to what this opening day roster is going to look like, whether it is with that first baseman or not. So, Evan, what are your thoughts here? Definitely, Ryne Stanek was a big part of this bullpen in the postseason. So, I'm happy to see it. I know there's some stuff at face value, but I like it.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy about it because we talked about in our group chat nonstop that Stanek was a guy we wanted back. Obviously, it depended on the price. It apparently is a 1-year deal in the 4 to 5 million range. That's what Andy
Yeah.
Martino is saying. So everyone's favorite Andy Martino. But yeah, I think everyone wanted him back after what happened in the playoffs, even though there was, a rough stretch for him when he first got here, started to settle in. And then September, he looked like garbage again. And it was a lot of Jekyll and Hyde for him. Now coming in and not facing, I think he's going to get less leverage situations now because you have Minter, you have Diaz, which I think is going to alleviate a lot of the pressure for Stanek, which makes us even better. And if they go out and add maybe one more high leverage arm, then you're really talking about this bullpen being lethal. Plus, with Nunez coming back and being healthy, hopefully, now you have a lot of guys that could work in high leverage, and Stanek being one of them. Uh, this is a guy that we both wanted at the deadline too last year. They got him. So at 4 to 5 million, you can't complain because worst comes to worst, you just dump him if things really go bad and he's performing like he did in August and late September last year. If it's that bad, you dump him. But I don't see that happening because, like I said, he's going to face a lot lower leverage parts of the lineup, and he's going to come in probably in like the seventh or eighth inning versus, coming in for safe situations even every now and then. But the playoffs, I think, is really what saved the face with Stanek because everyone wanted this guy gone and done with, and nobody trusted him. And then come the playoffs, outside of that game 6 versus the Dodgers, he was complete nails, especially game 5, where he gave, I think it was 7 outs that outing. And, he has the strikeout stuff. Obviously, the thing that sucks is that he gives up the long ball every now and then. He walks a lot of batters. It is what it is, though. If you get what you got from him last season, but a little bit more consistently, in terms of his playoff performance, I think that's ideally where you want him to be. And yeah, what you're saying in the chat there, Turo, yeah, the Ottavino replacement, but he's actually not garbage like Ottavino was in his final year here. I don't know if you're having issues with your mic, Carson, but or if you could even hear me. All right, Carson might be having issues with his audio right now, but can't hear you. It just doesn't end with this. It doesn't. But yeah, in terms with Stanek, just to continue to build off of it, uh, yeah, I mean, this is the type of player that I think Stearns obviously values too, considering the fact that he does love guys that have pitched in New York before. And now that we saw him pitch last year in New York, Stearns probably loved that as well. And it's really the playoffs again that saved it. And even in general, like dating back to his Houston days, quality numbers in the playoffs. It's not just a thing where it was last year only. He struggled a little bit in 2023. But if you look at what he did in 2022, when the Astros won the World Series, was nails in the 4 games that he pitched. In 2021, nails then as well, pitching to a 2.45 ERA. And he was limiting a lot more of the walk stuff, which is really what was the best part about it. And then a little bit of experience in Miami as well, even though who cares about what they did in 2020, fake season, all that stuff. But yeah, and I guess Carson's still having issues there. So I'll work through this now. As long as you guys could hear me in the chat, then
Am I good? You hear
yeah,
me?
there we go. You're
Okay.
good.
Yeah, my headset just decided, hey, I just don't want to work, and then I had to switch some inputs. So I'm back. I'm not sure. I heard half of what you were saying because for most of it, I could hear not you, but I could. My mic was working because of my headset, and then half of it I heard you, but you couldn't hear me. So I'm sure you said postseason experience, stuff like that. Of deepening the bullpen in this regard. I know that a lot of people want to talk about some other stuff that's been going on with the New York Mets, and it seems like it's being pertained with Andy Martino about Pete Alonso in this case. But before we even get into any of that, I think that deepening this bullpen is what they what they needed to do. Obviously, because not only just because of question marks, but I think that just overall with this bullpen last year, it really seemed like a collaborative effort of catastrophe where a lot of guys were continuing to walk guys, put themselves into sticky situations, and the depth definitely was not something that was there. Something that was really, really noticeable when we played the Dodgers. The Dodgers had a very, very deep bullpen. They were pumping arms out like crazy, even though they had so many injuries to their pitching. I think that, when you see an organization like that, you need to deepen the bullpen as well. The bullpen is a huge thing to the postseason. We know that it is. And when you're facing an elite team like the Dodgers, you need those types of arms there. And, I do agree that Ryne Stanek most likely will be in the middle relief type of role now, depending on, if there's any injuries. I think Danel Nunez has earned his spot to be a back-end role type of guy, whether it is 7th or 8th. It's all really depending on if he is healthy. There's a few other guys in this bullpen that it depends on if they are healthy or not. Sean Reed-Foley is one of them, battling injuries as much as he has. But again, I we're asking you guys in the chat right now, gave you guys this bullpen of the notable arms of Diaz, Minter, Nunez, Stanek, Garrett, and Budo. asking you guys if you think it is a top 10 bullpen, a middle 10 bullpen, or a bottom 10 bullpen in baseball. So let us know what you think about it in face value. I'm going to bring in some people from the chat. Robert coming in here saying, with this current rotation, we need a killer bullpen. Listen, I haven't been one to really knock on the rotation because I think that it's going to go over some of the expectations because I think that there is a lot of upside there. But there isn't anything that is particularly lights out, and there could be some growing pains into the fact that some of these guys can't get past 5 innings. You're going to need a deeper bullpen than that. And the fact that they also do have some guys who have been starters in the past in the bullpen, such as Griffin Canning, maybe Tyler McGill is in that conversation. I don't know. It does extend the game. It shortens the game a lot better with the depth that they are building. It may not be the flashiest names, but again, it's something that I think, a committee of arms could definitely help going down the stretch of the season because it's 162 games. You never know. Jeff Cohen saying, glad he's back. I'm glad too. I've always been a Stanek fan. And Truro coming in here saying, this show never sleeps. Let's go. Absolutely. We're always here. We are absolutely here. Based on name value, it is middle 10. Based on talent, it's top 10. I think based on ceiling, it's definitely top 10. It's one of the best. I don't think it is I don't think it is locked down because again of the details that we all know with all of these arms that I just listed off. Like if you're looking at it from Diaz, he's going to have to regain a little bit more of the form. Last year, he was kind of half and half with the injury. Sometimes he was good. Sometimes he was bad. I have trust in Edwin Diaz. He's my favorite Met. I hope that we get that back. But you never know. AJ Minter, some question marks with the injury history. Hopefully that hip is better. And hopefully recovers from it and he'll be fine. Danel Nunez, injury history. Stanek wasn't very consistent, very Jekyll and Hyde with us. But, hopefully, that back can hold up. That's another thing about Stanek. He did have a big back injury that he was fighting through. And it seemed like the Mets were able to tap into it towards the end and they were able to progress that way. So maybe in a full season, we see a little bit more consistency, maybe in a lower leverage role. Reed Garrett, we all know about the usage with him. Jose Budo, there's some control issues. There's some questions about if he is a rotational piece. I'm sure he's going to compete for a rotation spot in spring training. So, and we all know about moving parts with David Stearns. I mean, the opening day bullpen last year, let's not forget, Edwin Diaz and Adam Ottavino were the only ones that survived the rest of the year. And I really do believe that it's just Adam Ottavino having dirt on the front office. So, obviously Edwin Diaz is your guy. He's going to be here. He's your closer, whether you like it or not. I've talked about this all before. I like it. Is the contract crazy? Yes. But as for Ryne Stanek's contract, 1 year in the $4 to $5 million range. I don't know what the exact number is. So I can plug it into I can plug it into that. But again, I think that this bullpen once again got deeper, and I really thought that Stanek was actually on his way to Atlanta. So that's quite a steal away. So we stole him away from Atlanta, and we also took AJ Minter as well. And AJ Minter's talked some shit on his way out, so that was great.
Yeah, I was worried too that he was going to go to Atlanta and just torch us throughout the entire season, but I still think either way, they're not done adding to the bullpen because we've heard about Tim Hill for the past few weeks. I think that if David Robertson's market crashes, they'll maybe be in on him. I feel like they want to add another guy that either is a left-handed arm or has good numbers against left-handed batters, so they have a little bit more versatility in that bullpen to where they're not just relying on Minter and Diaz strictly to get some of those better lefties out. Maybe they bring back Brooks Raley, but he also won't be back until probably like July or August if they did add him to the bullpen. So I don't think they're done either way, which is what makes this even more exciting. And, now you're looking at Danny Young, who is the top lefty in the bullpen last year and the only guy that was really relied on to get those left-handed batters out. Now you're talking about potentially having more of those if they add a Tim Hill or if they go out and bring back David Robertson from a couple seasons ago with Stanek here now and then Diaz. This bullpen is completely different from what it was last year. And I think there's a lot more safer options as well, which is probably what Stearns looked at because we talked about it too. Come the playoffs, it wasn't even a circle of trust anymore. It was just Stanek and Diaz. That was really it. And that's part of why they couldn't even hold on in game 6 either, because Diaz and Stanek, they both had their arms, especially Stanek ran into the ground there. And there was no one else he could trust because Maton was just garbage in the playoffs. And Danny Young was not even utilized really in the playoffs. And it just got to a point where you had way too many arms. And even in September, too. I mean, how many times did we talk about how it just Ottavino and Stanek hanging out there in the bullpen, and though everyone else is being worked way too much? And you need more safety in it. And bringing back Stanek definitely adds to that. Again, hopefully, like you mentioned, with the back injury, they fix that there, and hopefully that could lead to a little bit more consistency. But even then, you talk about adding a Tim Hill. I like this bullpen a lot because you're looking at the names that you mentioned. Plus, you still have Sean Reed-Foley. Danny Young is in the mix. Tyler Zuber, I know everyone's a little high on right now, potentially having some upside there. So versus last year, where funny enough, I thought the bullpen was actually solid going into last year, but there's a lot more safety with this bullpen, and especially because there are injury concerns, like you mentioned. At least now you look at it as, okay, the first guy up could be a Sean Reed-Foley, and I feel a lot better about that versus last year where it was like claiming Alex Young off waivers and bringing up Danny Young right away. There's just a lot more there.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely more of a selection of kind of catching lightning in a bottle, but also you do have a little bit of this history. And I think that that was kind of the feeling last year of guys who were trying to get these bounce back seasons. And when it came to, trying to, connect things through, I think that Carlos Mendoza did a really good job as a first year manager to kind of configure that, because there were a lot of inconsistencies down the stretch. I mean, we all had to, deal with a lot of things with the Jorge Lopez situation. Jake Diekman was not great. There were other guys in that bullpen that just did not perform the way that they should have. And for some reason, they were finding a way, to still find a way to, lock things down the stretch of kind of, piecing it together the way that they could. And, David Stearns was very opportunistic in that way. Guys, let us know if we're having any connection issues, because I am getting a few notifications about it. Let us know if we are lagging at all. Just to know, it's just been this entire stream has been very, very spotty, but let us know if there is. But now, as for Ryne Stanek, we did get one tweet from Andy Martino talking about this in relation to Pete Alonso. Now, I think that when it comes to this whole talk, there's a lot more from Mets fans that are a little bit confused in that way as to how that does relate to this and how does that relate to that, because we did have a look of Mets fans seeing Jesse Winker get signed, and then all of a sudden Alonso's gone or Alonso's going another way. I think it's more of just the look of the luxury tax of what they can fit and what they can't. And when it comes to, the look of, the Mets roster right now going into those thresholds, I think that when it's all said and done, they're going to have to connect things in. And the way that, Andy Martino is putting out, he just put out his update of how it pertains to Alonso. And let's see, there was a update from him. He just put out on SNY saying the only reason we are having this conversation 2 weeks after that pivot from Alonso he has yet to find a home with another team. Talks have advanced last week between Alonso's camp in Toronto, league source said, but a potential stumbling back there could have been deferred money based on Toronto's heavily deferred agreement with outfielder Anthony Santander. We've written this before, but the Mets stance on Alonso as a player and a person remains consistent. They like him and they want him back all along. Now that they have pivoted, bringing back Alonso back on a similar 3-year deal with opt-outs to the one that he rejected would push them to an uncomfortable payroll territory of $330 to $340 million range. That is a big decision, and it won't happen today or likely this week. So it seems like we're still going to be in flux here of what's going to be going on. It seems like the connection went back. But as pertains to Alonso, I mean, I talked about this, all on our show. That production has been already replaced by Juan Soto and then some. So all they're going to have to do is fill in first base, whether it is Pete Alonso or not. So again, I'm talking about this from the point of view of having Juan Soto in this position, also having Mark Vientos as well, having a breakout year. I'm good with Alonso or I'm good without him. Like, I'm talking about it from a production standpoint in the lineup and not just purely positional, which I think is kind of being confused as two different things to one with some Mets fans. And I get it. I don't want Brett Baty in the lineup either. But again, fixing things in with Alonso, it seems like a deal like this with Ryne Stanek between $4 to $5 million, they're leaving the door open still. And to be honest, after what they've gone through, what we heard publicly from Steve Cohen this week, they don't have to do this. They really don't have to do this. So again, we'll see what happens. AC coming in here saying great signing. Hopefully this means no Jose Iglesias in the end of, oh my God, let's play serious winning baseball. This Stanek was serious when coming out to pitch. That's the attitude that we need. Listen, if you want Jose Iglesias back or not, I don't think he really fits into what's going on right now. We talked about how you can bring back Jose Iglesias, but it's not going to happen. So we all know where I'm retaining to, and it's not going to happen. And I'm not going to rant about it ever again, because I'm just going to accept that that certain person is going to be here for the next 20 years.
Yeah, and also in terms of the contract, Mark Feizen just confirmed that's $4.5 million with incentives that could get it for $500K. So that's where the 4 to 5 is. So yeah, and also it's interesting that he mentioned in his article, Martino, that is, about Kenley Jansen potentially being on the Mets' radar there, but he's basically saying that, I guess, if the Mets don't bring back Alonso, they'll pivot to maybe another high leverage arm or two. It really depends on that. If I'm the Mets, though, at this point, at what point do you draw a deadline in all of this with Alonso? Because how many times have we also brought up that it gets to a point where it's too late to sign a player and you're not going to get the most of that player with limited spring training reps and limited ABs, all that other stuff, and potentially not even being on the opening day roster just to ramp up like JD Martinez last year. We talk about that all the time. At some point, the Mets should draw a line in the sand and say, Pete Alonso, if you want to be back, then you have until the middle of February, like just some random pick a day in February, whatever it is. And if not, we're going to look in another direction, and they could go with the direction of either playing the younger guys or, getting a Mountcastle, who we've heard them connected to, or Torkelson potentially. And I've voiced my opinion that I would rather just go get Mountcastle for the year.
Yeah.
And, maybe you sign another reliever or two on a 1-year deal, or maybe the market crashes even more on a Pivetta or Flaherty, which I don't love Flaherty, but maybe the market crashes on one of those two, and you could add another arm or two there. And they're both on 1-year deals, those guys. And all of this leads to bridging your way to Vlad Jr. next offseason. It might not be a guarantee he gets there, but I'm willing to take that chance because even then, I mean, the first base market is still very intriguing next offseason, even if Vlad did not hit the market, because you still have guys like
Yeah.
Murakami coming over. Josh Naylor is also going to hit the market this upcoming offseason. And Pete Alonso, if he doesn't come back this offseason, maybe he's hitting the market next year after signing a 1-year deal elsewhere. Who the hell knows? All that
Yeah.
to say, though, at some point, and I was there for Amazing Day to see Cohen's visible frustration with all of
Yeah.
this. And at what point do they have a deadline where, all right, once pitchers and catchers report, you have 3 days, let's just say, to sign.
Yeah.
And if not, we're looking somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, the trade market could be something that they do look at. We already know that there is a deadline in the realm of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who has given it until February 18th to figure out some kind of extension. And that's kind of where this timeline lines up. And whether people want to talk about, the timeline of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or Pete Alonso staying or going, there is definitely a lot of different options that can definitely give you a decent pillow. It all really depends on what they are really more confident in. When it comes to Spencer Torkelson, this is a piece that, let's say if he does get going, and if you were to trade for him, he has years and years of control. Is there kind of a look of maybe he flip-flops with this, first base DH type of thing? Maybe. I don't know. I don't like putting a young kid at DH. I've expressed that with, Mark Vientos. He was able to, playing third base, he was able to break out that way. So I didn't think that would be great. But when it comes to, Mountcastle, that's 2 years. So there is a little bit of a blanket. You could just possibly bring him back if you were to trade for him, and you were to just able to stick with him if he plays well. And then there's also the look of Ryan Clifford. What does he look like too? So there still is other things that you could pivot to that can give you that sustained success going forward at the first base position. And it doesn't have to include Pete Alonso. If it does include Pete Alonso, great. All I really want right now is to take Brett Baty out of the opening day lineup. That's all I want to do. I don't care how you do it. Just do it. Because Brett Baty, whether people are high on him or not, I personally think it's just Mets bias, and this is our own guy, and we got to hold him to we got to hold him close. I don't believe in him. Never have. Never really thought it was that great of a pick anyway. If people want to, if you want to go to that direction, fine by me. You still want to believe in him. He's 25 years old. He was a 19-year-old high schooler that was drafted, failed 5th grade. Go ahead. Pushing all the chips there. But there's other options out there that can make you remain flexible, who have proven more. If you want to choose Brett Baty over Spencer Torkelson because you don't want to give up somebody in low A ball, then you're not moving forward in that regard. I understand that they may have some kind of a high look for Brady somewhat, but I don't know how long we can jerk this thing around where we're having Baty maybe compete for first base or second base, or maybe we give him some reps at third base in the outfield. At the major league level, 600 plate appearances, he's shown nothing. He hasn't shown anything. He just hasn't. I don't know what to say anymore. Sign Pete and then put Clifford at first and Pete at DH in 2026. If the Mets had a plan to do that, and I don't think Ryan Clifford is just going to automatically get the job like Pete did on opening day in 2029 when they did this whole thing with his service time. And to be honest, he wouldn't be a free agent right now if they didn't do that. But, Brody Van Wagenen. But anyways, Pete at DH, to be honest, if Pete Alonso were to be put at DH at 2026 and they were going to talk about putting Ryan Clifford there. If Pete knew that, he probably would opt out anyway. Like he probably would opt out no matter what. So I don't see any mixture in that. But MEZ saying, why hasn't there been any leaks on a contract for Alonso from the San Francisco Giants beat writers, Toronto beat writers, or LA beat writers? Because there isn't one.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
Yeah, because there isn't one.
Yeah.
And it's all Scott Boras doing his Scott Boras thing of this or that. But now looks like Alonso's calling the bluff now. It looks like that's the deal. We're hearing he desperately wants to come back to the Mets from John Heyman, the 100% Boras mouthpiece, as we talk about. I mean, that's it, Yeah,
there's no other offer out there, because if there truly was, then why is there no bidding war at all for him to land him? We would have heard about something by now. It's complete and utter garbage, and that's why you heard Cohen and Stearns on Amazing Day just absolutely dummy Scott Boras without mentioning his name, because they know that it's all bullshit. We know it's bullshit as fans. So why should they give in to what Pete and Boras are asking for? I mean, we've said it since December too. We've been screaming this for months that there was no market for Pete Alonso. The whole thing was made up, and now he's screwing himself even more. I mean, that's just been the story of this entire thing, is that every single time he trips on himself, gets a guaranteed 7-year
tripped over
contract
his bat
offer.
In the postseason.
Yeah. Tripped over along the sidewall there in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
No matter what, I mean, the 7-year deal, turns it down, continues to get extension offers. And then even early in the offseason, we heard about potentially a 3-year, $90 million offer. And I don't know how true that is, because I feel like maybe it would have got done, but it wouldn't surprise me if he turned that down either. It wouldn't surprise me, because that's just the way that this has gone with him, where he continues to think that there is some market for him, especially Boras, and they continue to play themselves. And I don't know how Alonso has not just fired Boras at this point, because Boras is just screwing this over for him entirely.
Yeah, I mean, he's just making it worse. And we've talked about it on here that most of it is on Alonso, because we all know about the timeline. He rejected the 7-year offer, like you just said. And then he hired Scott Boras. But he basically hired somebody to be his hype man and make him believe that he would get all of this for him. He hasn't. Because the reality of the situation is a lot of these major league front offices, and we've said there's been a hesitation to give him a long-term deal. He's not getting that, obviously. It's in the 3-year deal range now. There has been hesitation in that regard to, giving him that type of deal. 10 years ago, front offices were a little bit more flexible in that way, giving these, 8-year contracts to Albert Pujols, or this 9-year deal to Prince Fielder, or even the Reds extending a 30-year-old Joey Votto to 10 or 11 years or something like that. Now it's a little bit different. It's not about the player. It's about the positional value. And if you can get that as, an overall look as a team of overall team production and not just player production, Pete Alonso, the Mets have all of the cards. They've had it since the beginning. I mean, we talked about it of what the Mets have, from the beginning of how much advantage the Mets do have. Pete Alonso is going to be 30 years old. He plays a position that is not a premier position. He had a down year in 2024. They have the qualifying offer on him. Nobody else seems to want to bid on him. He means more to anybody other, to any of these other, to the Mets, compared to any other MLB team. And he's not getting more than 7 years, $158 million. The problem is that, like I say over and over and over again, in regards to this Pete Alonso thing, he could have had 7 years, $158 million. He rejected it. He wanted to go into the delusion that he's the next Prince Fielder or he's the next Albert Pujols, which he's not. And he wanted a hype man for that. Scott Boras, of course, overselling. But the overselling with Scott Boras, it's tamed down now in this league now.
It's exactly what MEZ just said.
Yeah. Back in the day, Boris would hand these GMs a binder on his players and then say, sign his guys to ridiculous deals. These new age GMs have some binders and more info now. Exactly. And not to mention, even with the Mets, I mean, let's not forget, and listen, I'm not very technical in this field. Steve Cohen, whether he's not a baseball mind or not, he's just a fan. We know what he does for a living. He's a hedge fund manager. It's a asset management department. And listen, I don't know. I'm not gonna say that I professionally know this, but he understands the meaning of an asset. And if one of the biggest baseball minds in David Stern says, okay, well, he's not worth that per value, considering his age and all this situation, we're not going to give Boris the time of day. And like we have said, we have challenged Pete Alonso all offseason, because we know we have pivots. Trade market, there's Vlad Jr. over there. Maybe if you consider Ryan Clifford a future piece of this team, who knows? I'm not putting him in that formula yet. Still want to see him in the major leagues, see how he progresses. He's still young, not going to put pressure on the kid, not going to plug in a prospect. We have our options, and we also have options that are coming from the mind of David Stearns, which I trust. Whether you trust him or not, it's beyond you. Whatever. Got you to the NLCS Game 6, so I don't even know what else you can ask for from him. But when it comes to, the look of, when the Mets actually, were to jump in here, why would they bid against themselves? This has basically been falling right into the Mets' lap. And yes, is it frustrating? It is. But again, you can hear, from Rage say, okay, well, this is the Dodgers. The Dodgers, how are we going to compete with the Dodgers without Pete Alonso? How we're not going to get Pete Alonso, and how we're not going to get all these names. And the Dodgers are getting everyone. And this is, if you were to step in and overpay for Alonso, you're not going to be the Dodgers. You're going to be the Angels.
Yeah. It's literally what we've been saying this entire time. And
here's another piece of detail. Here's another piece in detail. That 7-year, $158 million contract, that was offered by Billy Epler.
I was just about to say that. Yeah.
Where was Billy Epler the general manager for 6 years?
The Angels. And this is
Angels.
Exactly.
You got it.
And this is exactly this is why I can't help but laugh when I'm constantly seeing, Ep Dog would have handled this offseason so much better. We'd be in Dodgers territory. Dodgers territory is not spending like drunken sailors. They wait for the superstar and pounce, which we've talked about all offseason. They let Corey Seager, who won a World Series MVP for them, granted, again, fake season, I know, but either way, they still Corey Seager is still one of the best shortstops in the game, and they let him walk.
One of the best postseason performers in the game, too.
Yeah, and they let him walk because they had Trey Turner for another year. And nobody talks about that at all. But with Pete Alonso, we have to give him what he wants because he's a homegrown talent. Get the fuck out of here with that. He hasn't won a World Series here. He hasn't won a World Series MVP. He hasn't won an MVP here. I'm so tired of hearing about this crap because if you want to be like the Dodgers, you wait for Vlad next offseason. And if Vlad's not there, you pivot elsewhere and you wait for a different superstar to become available that's also young, like they did with Juan Soto this past year. You don't go out and sign your Alex Bregmans. You don't go out there and overpay Pete Alonso because that is what the Angels do. That's how they got in trouble with plenty of contracts. Albert Pujols, Anthony Rendon. This is how we're stuck with Marte right now because they overpaid for a guy that
Speaking of homegrown talents, homegrown talents, we gave Jeff McNeil what he wanted. What has happened since then?
Yeah, that too. And how many of us are clamoring for him to get out of here? I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Second half last year. He'll be fine.
That's true. Yeah, the second half, squirrel power, baby. But I'm just so tired of hearing, oh, give him what he wants because he's a homegrown talent. This is the same organization that didn't do that with DeGrom, who would have deserved it way more than Pete Alonso.
Yes.
So I don't want to hear any of this crap of, but he's a homegrown talent, but we need the 30 to 40 home runs. You just got that by signing Juan Soto.
Yeah.
You
did just get that. And then some more with a perennial 400 on base percentage, an elite robotic eye at the plate, which we know Pete Alonso does not have. So positional wise, you do need to fill in whether it is first base or third base. Whether it is Pete Alonso, great. Whether it is through the trade, great. And that's the type of bat that I would like to add. Right now, to be honest, we've heard these different types of, deals or whatever. I think that, when people talk about this, like this whole Epler thing of, he would have spent it. Yes, he probably would have.
Pull that comment up.
Did.
Pull the comment up in the chat about Epler.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. There has not been one multi-year Epler contract that is aged above expectation. That's true.
Yeah.
Multi-year contract for
Marte.
Eduardo Escobar. Didn't age well. Justin Verlander. Max Scherzer. Marte. Quintana, I guess, is like the only somewhat exception, but it was a roller coaster year for him. Adam Ottavino.
Either way, congrats. You hit on a fifth starter. You hit on a fifth starter.
Yeah.
Give it up.
Yep.
Big ups to Billy Epler for hitting on a
who decided to have his
signing.
last bad start as a Met with me in attendance for a 3 hour, 45 minute. Whatever. But again, it's like just not how to operate. Now, I mean, we could get back to Stanek or whatever, but we're kind of just going by in the chat here. Johnny K saying Mountcastle is capable of contributing nicely. I think he would be quite a bit more potential to be and stay a very good player versus Torkelson. I'm not convinced on Spencer personally. Listen, I think that there's pros and cons from both of them, from trading for both of them, because I think that the trade value is going to be different because of the years of control. You've seen more consistency as a safer pick, such as Ryan Mountcastle, who I think that on an average day could give you, the top half of what first basemen do give you. Do I think that he is a 40 home run bat like Pete Alonso? Absolutely not. But I'm not looking to replace that right now. When it comes to Torkelson, in ceiling wise, is he more of a 30 to 40 home run bat? Maybe. Have we seen it? Somewhat. I think that we've seen more consistency recently from Torkelson, but nothing to be blinking an eye at the number 1 overall pick status. I think, whatever. What Mets fan had a problem with the Marte deal when he signed it? Me. Actually, that was my only problem with it. That was my only problem with it. Because, again, Marte at his best is a good player. He's a great contributor. We saw it in 2022. But there was injury history. 4 guaranteed years. He was definitely not going to age well. And we saw it immediately at the end of that 2022 season. Was he a key part to that 2022 season? Yes. But right after that, he's been a shell of himself. And whether you think he has been this contributor or that contributor, $20 million for him to, hit left-handed pitching as a DH and steal like 10 bases a year because of his lower half being compromised.
And he doesn't even hit for power anymore either.
No.
There's no power.
0 home runs since that return from injury, like 4 extra base hits. So hit singles versus left-handed pitching as a DH, get paid $20 million for that. That's what we're stuck with. Thank you, Billy Epler. Thank you so much.
And
would love to get Hunter Harvey, though. Loved that report. Didn't pull the trigger, though.
I wish. I freaking
I
wish.
wish.
It's what we talked about too with Drury, how like Epler made these moves on the surface where it's like, okay, but then there's always a catch to it. And
Yeah.
the catch with Marte was the fact that not just the injury history, it was the term. Because when they signed that, everybody knew, as much as you're saying, well, nobody had a problem, most people knew that come the third, fourth year, it was going to be bad. The first 2
Yeah.
years, you'll probably get decent play, but that's not even what happened.
Yeah. He aged
He
in the
fell
second
off
year.
the first year, like you mentioned. Even it's
Yeah.
been, it just has not aged well at all, and that's the problem with having a guy like Epler who is overpaying, and that's the problem with these fans that want to overpay for guys who are not going to age well. But oh, you need to be like the Dodgers and spend money. You don't go out and sign Bregman, who's clearly not going to age properly. If teams viewed Bregman so highly, then why is he not signed yet? If Pete Alonso was viewed so highly, why is he not signed yet?
Exactly. It's all about who the Mets value and who they don't value. I mean, let's not forget also another thing. Speaking of relievers, when it comes to relievers that Epler brought in, the optional guys or whatever you're talking about in that regard. Notice how when we were getting rid of these guys or DFAing these guys, nobody was picking them up. I mean, that really just shows you. Not to mention, remember that trade deadline as well. Vogelbach, Ruff, Naquin, Gibbons, all of them right now are out of baseball.
I
Shows you
have a
the eye
question
for
too.
talent that Epler has. Just saying. And listen, when it comes to Marte, when healthy, when is he healthy?
And even when he is healthy, again, he went.
I don't know how many if men we can have on this team that are getting paid $20 million.
Even then, Marte had 0 home runs from June on.
I don't know if we had a connection there.
Yeah, I think we did there. Because I was gonna say that as well. That let me ask you this:
And
which
again, he
team?
can be a nice little player. Yeah, I don't know if we
Yeah, there's bad
disconnected.
connection problems right now because it's yeah, it's bad right now. I don't know if it's better now, but yeah, I'm just gonna try to leave and then
Yeah,
join
I'm not
back then.
sure. I don't know if it's me. Guys, let us know if it is me or Evan who are having the connection problems.
I think it's you just
Saying
because
that
your
my
camera looks a
little
little
thing is low. I don't
blurry.
know if it's me or you. Um, all right, guys, let us know who the connection issues are. I've been fiddling in and out with it. Um,
Yeah, Carson's blurry. Yeah, I think it's on.
yeah, it might be me. So I'll reset it if you want to. Yeah, it's me. Okay, I'll reset it and you can chat it up with the chat here.
All right, sounds good. But yeah, just to build off of that point more with the Epler stuff and just in general overpaying for certain guys, which I was about to lead in there with Carson, the team that ended up trading for Escobar. What team was it? The Angels. The Angels were the team that and yeah, I know that you were able to hear us, but there was a little bit of connection issues because I was talking and then Carson didn't hear until like a minute later. So there were just issues there with our connection. But either way, yeah. You look at who who wanted Eduardo Escobar. It was the Angels. It's just like again, you don't overspend on the middle class. You don't because this is why Bregman's not signed. This is why a guy like Pete Alonso's not signed. Don't you believe they overpaid Canning? No, because this is what the pitching market is. And if that's one of the worries, I mean, I don't know what to tell you because that should be far from one of just from any worries, honestly. And they view something with Canning with some upside there, and will it work out? I don't know. If it doesn't, then you cut ties with them, and it's really not a big deal at all. But I think there's value to Griffin Canning because you could use him in either a high leverage or a long relief role, rather, or you could use him out of the starting rotation. And, I don't know which way they're going to go about it. It looks like he got reliever type money, but he also could be a spot starter in that Trevor Williams esque role where, all right, if there's an injury last minute, or if, someone might need an extra day of rest, we could just plug Griffin Canning in and everything will be good. Stanek and Canning are on the same level, same contract. I know that, but the thing with Canning is there is that ability to start. That's why they're in a similar ballpark with their money. Because, and yeah, it's what Ricardo's saying, that Canning will probably be a long relief guy and a spot starter. And that's where they see his value, and that's why he got that type of money. I mean, Paul Blackburn might fall in the same category, and he's making $4 million next year. Granted, he was under team control for another year, but that's probably where Griffin Canning looked and said, I want to be paid similar to that because our roles are going to be similar. And that's what he got. I think there's no issue with that. I really don't, because again, if they see the upside there with him, then this front office has gave us no reason not to believe in them in terms of potentially finding upside and finding value there. So, we'll see. Again, if it doesn't work out, I think that it's easy to cut ties with them. You have plenty of pitching depth right now to where Tyler McGill could fill in that role, to where any of the other guys, maybe like a Max Kranick, could fill in the role. Sean Reed Foley could. So you have a lot of guys that you could just circle to if things don't work out there. Sorry, I'm just reading something about Pete Alonso right now from a Toronto beat writer. A source said MLB agents have recently been informed they cannot contact Pete Alonso. This would have to be initiated by Alonso himself. Evidently, Alonso wants to continue working with his agent Scott Boras without hearing from other agents looking to poach him. So I don't know really how much that means right now with, you know, him signing right there. I mean, if all that sounds like to me is it's going to take longer. And like we mentioned earlier, if that's going to be the case, then I'm sorry, they got to look in another direction because this is just getting ridiculous here. If he's a spot starter with 6 guys in the rotation already, then I'm scared and worried. I'd rather see Sproat in a spot start than Canning, which you could see, but they want to give Sproat more time to marinate in the minor leagues. It's better to over marinate than to rush the guy up, because we saw what happened with Christian Scott last year, where he was rushed up because of the fact that the starting pitching and just in general, this pitching staff had a lot of injuries, had a lot of questions to it. They want a little bit more of a safety net there, to where if Sproat's coming up, it's because he is forcing the hand of the organization to come up. And it gives them a safety net to where if he is struggling in the major leagues, you could send him back down because you have a little bit more roster flexibility. So again, that's just how I view that. And yeah, Kranick, I'm definitely intrigued by too, Ricardo. Sounds like he's done with Boris. What a weird report. That's what I'm trying to figure out, if that's what that means, or if that means this is going to drag out longer. I mean, if that's what it is with Boris, then if that's the case and he's getting rid of Boris, I mean, that lines up with what we talked about earlier, where I don't know why he's still even a Boris client right now, because Boris is just being completely ridiculous. Although, no, it would mean the opposite, actually. Yeah, because it says he wants to continue working with Boris without hearing from other agents looking to. Okay, no, I read that wrong. I apologize. But yeah, so it looks like he's gonna work with Boris still. I don't know why. Again, he's just, it's what we talked about earlier. He's just continuing to trip over himself here nonstop.
All right. You guys hear me? I'm all
Yep,
good.
good.
Yeah. I don't know why I was doing that, but hey, I'm back. Okay. Um so for those of you in the chat right here, yeah, sounds like he's done with Boris. That was yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, people were talking about like how I don't know, Brandon Nimmo has something to do with this because he's a Boris client or something. Like I have no idea why um this has just become a thing. Um it's not really I don't think it has anything to do with Nimmo. I don't know if it's me just wearing the orange and blue glasses or the Brandon Nimmo glasses because I'm very protective of Brandon Nimmo. But I think we've all really have established it from here is that Boris is well known throughout this league. It's not just going to be, Brandon Nimmo saying, oh, he got me this deal. He'll get you an even better one because, you do all of this. I feel like maybe Alonso's getting bad advice here, but again, this is his decision. Like I'm not going to go on and say that, this is the full on Boris just being Boris or this or that. Like at some point you're going to have to hold somebody accountable in this way.
And it's
And
the it was actually the
yeah,
opposite of what that comment said. Pete
yeah.
doubled down on his loyalty with Boris because Ben Nicholson Smith put out a report a few minutes ago saying that a source said MLB agents have recently been informed they cannot contact Pete Alonso. This would have to be initiated by Alonso himself. Evidently, Alonso wants to continue working with his agent Scott Boras without hearing from other agents looking to poach him.
Wow, so basically he's become like so basically he's a hot commodity among agents but not with MLB teams. Basically.
Yeah.
So other agents are looking to get a deal for him and a piece of his commission there. Um that's crazy.
Yeah, it's what that comment I was just about to say. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just it's like it really is like it's crazy. It really is. Now am I one to continue to talk about the intelligence of Pete Alonso? Sure, I do talk about it. We do talk about it a lot here. Um, you know, is it a gullible sense for him where he believes that he's worth more? I mean, I'm not saying this in a mean-spirited way, but it's like that's the reality of the situation. If I'm emphasizing it for, dramatic effect, I am, but it's not like I'm personally attacking him in that way, This whole thing is pretty on brand for him. Listen, I think it goes to show, let's just say that, it goes to show, you know, what situation is the right situation as compared to, a player that is a player that they're going to pursue. It seems like, the top market guys do well with Scott Boras, but then those, mid-tier type of guys that are afterwards doesn't seem like it is as plausible now as front offices start to be a little bit more diligent in that way. But apologies for all the connection situations, folks. But for those of you who are just joining us, Ryne Stanek is back with the New York Mets, and it still has us talking about Pete Alonso.
I was gonna say we just went off the
because it
deep
seems like
end.
he's the center. Yeah, it seems like he's the center of the universe and believes that he is. And I welcome him back with open arms if it ends up happening. But I'm ready to get to spring training now. So I think at this point, it is becoming a joke. Will White puts it very, very simple here. It's becoming a joke. Move on from Pete already. He's a grown-ass man. And listen, I think that if he wasn't a Met for 6 years, the Mets would have their full back turned on him. But I feel like they want to do this due diligence here, and I understand it. We still would not be in these types of conversations, if Pete Alonso did not want to be a Met, which apparently he does desperately, John Heyman's words, desperately. And, I really do want to see this get done quickly before even pitchers and catchers are done. Because if we were to have Pete back, it will make the lineup better, definitely. Make the lineup deeper, absolutely. There's other options out there, though, that could help.
Yeah. And for BG's comment, I actually disagree with that entirely because we do have public info, and there's still some Met fans that are making Cohen and Stearns out to be the villains in all of this when it's clearly just Boris and Pete that are the problem. I mean, you had Met fans screaming Pete Alonso's name at Amazing Day like a bunch of 5-year-olds and making it seem like they're the villains because they're not giving Pete Alonso what he wants.
Yeah.
There still would be complaining. It's just unfortunately that's the case.
I would be upset if he was coming off a 53 home run season in 2020 in 2019. 2019 was about, I don't know, more than 6 years ago now. I feel like there's this vision of, he did it once, he'll do it again. Nothing will change. And like, there has to be a price here, and if Mets fans don't like it, you have every right to not like it, be upset or whatever. I personally think we're in good hands with this, even though the Mets have had every single advantage here. If he doesn't like it, or if Mets fans don't like it, he should have played better in 2024. We say this all the time. Should have played better. Said the same thing about Michael Conforto, but for some reason, since he didn't have a 53 home run season, he gets, banished to the underground. When Pete does it, there's a lot more popularity in that sense. So again, who knows? I was one of the ones that wanted Javier Baez back. I wanted him back because of the New York fire and everything. I think he probably would have done a lot better than he did in Detroit here. But I was also beyond done, still am, with Jeff McNeil. So, but instead they chose Jeff McNeil. He won the batting title. I ended up being wrong. But then they decided to pay him with 2 years of control. So, I still would rather take Javi Baez right now.
Also, I think that's a lot of revisionist history with Baez because no one expected the fall off to go this far off the deep end.
Yeah, that was the best stretch of his career when he was here. That was, and that was like interim hitting coaches here or whatever, whether you're talking about it. It was like the highest walk rate of his career, the highest production of his career. That little stretch got him that contract. And, obviously I'm being more, tongue in cheek with this. And, Jeff McNeil has been a better player than Javi Baez recently. I'm not stupid. But, I think that it would have been something that, would have been more of a big stage type of thing. I feel like Javier Baez probably would have made a little bit more of an impact in the postseason than Jeff McNeil possibly could. We wouldn't know in 2022, but you know what? That's all, beyond, it's way longer. Baez was terrible with Cubs. He was up and down with the Cubs. He had a lot of red flags. We know what his red flags are. But, I love Javi for what he did do here and what he, has done his entire career. He's an exciting player, but he's also a very low floor player. And when you see that low floor from Baez, it's really concerning. He'll basically offer it anything. So
I think saying he was terrible is a little bit of a stretch there. Like there were warning signs.
Stretches. He had terrible stretches with the Cubs. I do agree with that.
I was gonna say there were warning signs there, but like I said, I don't think anyone expected him to go from what he was in 2021, where he was an 800 OPS guy, and then fall off the deep end and be below league average. Like I think everyone at least would have expected league average from him going forward, and he's not even that.
Yeah, it's more of the talk of, I'd say, when it comes to Baez, the Mets, abilities in their lineup are disciplined guys. It protected Baez a lot more, where he could get more strikes and he could swing at them, crush them, destroy them. In Detroit, there's not really much protection there. In fact, with his discipline being on full display that doesn't even exist, taking him out of that lineup got the Tigers to the playoffs. But, it's whatever. Listen, I think that contract-wise, both of them are awful contracts. Marte or Baez or whatever you're talking about. We already know the flaws of Javier Baez, but I feel like they would have been protected here better. But that's all really in hindsight. That looking back, whatever. But again, we could also Monday morning quarterback this thing, and nobody expected Jeff McNeil to completely fall off after getting that batting title and getting that extension. And ever since then, he hasn't been good. Now, for me, considering some of the adjustments that were made in this league, I don't know. Did I predict it in any way? I don't know. But I didn't. I don't know if Jeff McNeil went out of his mind in 2022, and to be honest, if he didn't win that batting title, he would be gone by now.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. Yeah, and fans wouldn't be defending him at all, even though there's few now, but there wouldn't be anyone. And yeah, good thing they didn't get.
I don't judge anyone for defending their own guy, but I mean, maybe I do. But it's just it's not a way to run a baseball team.
Yeah,
but,
and
you can
this is
always
why.
Look in hindsight.
I mean, it really just puts a bow on like this entire conversation here of like Alonso and everything. Just trust the guys that are in place. I mean, they've gave us every reason from 1 year alone to show why we should have faith in them. I mean, getting this team to the NLCS with a bullpen that struggled down the stretch, with Jeff McNeil hitting cleanup on opening day this past season, and with a pitching staff that no one had any idea would perform to the way they did. So all that to be said, I mean, just trust what these guys are doing. There's no reason not to believe. And if Pete Alonso's not back, you could be upset about it, but just just trust the front office.
Yeah. Are we over the last tax threshold with this signing? I think you might be like 1 million into the third luxury tax. So, you're going to have a little bit of an adjustment there. I could possibly hold on. I can look it up here and update what is going on with the Mets financially, because I do have that all on tap. So let me see if it was even updated to that standard on the source I like to use. Doesn't look like it was updated yet, so it seems like $4.5 million is probably going to be the hit. I don't know if they maybe adjust it to deferred or something, or there's some kind of incentive thing that brings them down below before they can bring Alonso back for that third one. But we'll see what happens. We are loyal Mets fans, but we're also delusional. We still like players should be proud to play here. It should top free agents are running to play here, and we are not running to play here. And we need to understand that it's not going to be easy. Yeah, they're not there yet. They just aren't there yet. We have seen other players in terms of, the Dodgers, they would take deferred payments. Guys like Alonso, it doesn't seem like he doesn't want that deferred payment. We saw deferred payments from Shamanaya, and we have some deferred payments here, but nothing to that insane extreme because the Mets don't have that pedigree yet of monstrous winning. So they're going to have to establish that first. There's a lot of things they have to establish before they can get to the Dodgers level. They can't just spend, because then that will turn them into the Angels, like we have said. Like that's the process you're looking at. And is it frustrating? Sure. Seeing the Dodgers get everyone, I get it. But like Evan just explained, nobody expected this team to go to the NLCS Game 6 last year. 162 games have to be played first. And yes, I know the Dodgers are better, and maybe the Dodgers beat us again. But there still is things that they do need to build, and I do think that this is a better team than last year on paper. Hopefully it is shown. And, you know, there still is upside here, and if the upside does not come to a conclusion, doesn't show on the field, there's always a pivot. That's how you keep this thing sustained. You always have these things as pivots. I saw somebody talking about, you know, Griffin Canning getting overpaid. Again, 1 year deal, no such thing as a bad 1 year deal. But if he doesn't pitch well, he's gone, and they can pivot somewhere else.
That's what I was saying, because
sustainability.
Yeah, because someone was when they were saying that, and when you were off the stream, they were saying,
Yeah.
"Well, I'd rather see Sproat," and I was explaining, wouldn't you rather see a little bit more of a safety net versus what happened with Christian Scott last year, where they rushed Scott up because of the fact that the pitching depth was lacking, and it got to a point where they had to call him up. He blew his arm out, and now we're here with him.
What they were trying to prevent too. You could tell with the innings limit that they were trying to put on, Christian Scott. His arm just was not ready for that type of conditioning. And it ended up being the fear coming true that he needed Tommy John surgery, and now he's out for 2025. So when it comes to prospects, I'd love to see Brandon Sproat up here. Maybe I'd love to see Brett Blade Tidwell. He grabs his footing a little bit better in AAA as compared to what he did last year. But you do need veteran guys to fill that, flexible veteran guys to fill that, to not only, give you depth, but also to push you. When it comes to, Brett Beatty, one thing I feel like they were really, really missing last offseason was somebody to come in, an established first baseman of all tools, to help them push Brett Beatty. You brought in JD Martinez to help push, Martinez. And then you also had the defense from Lindor helping him out over there. But when it came to Beatty, I was like, okay, maybe bring in somebody like Gio Urshela. Somebody like that can push Beatty, who could be an everyday starter, was an everyday starter with the Braves last year, did pretty well for them, given their injury woes. Somebody who could start, maybe bat eighth in the lineup. He's not great, but he could start. He also could come off the bench. He also is motivated to get his career back on track, and it could motivate somebody like Brett Beatty as well.
Or
so that's
in hindsight,
what?
Or in hindsight, if Iglesias was up sooner, up right away, instead of it being Joey Wendell and Zach Short.
Yeah, exactly. Joey Wendell, Zach Short, Luis Guillorme or something like that. Like all those alternatives, that was not going to push Brett Beatty. Even with Jose Iglesias, the type of player that Brett Beatty is, I don't think it would have been a really good match. I feel like Jose Iglesias would be good for Luis Angel Acuna, Jet Williams, and any other of these other like toolsy guys. But when it comes to this power anchor or toolsy anchor to third base, somebody like Gio Urshela, maybe Yohan Moncada is one of those guys who has some stuff to prove, but he also is pushing the young guys and helping them out. But there just wasn't that for Beatty. Like he just didn't get that. He didn't get that once a cornerstone or a possible cornerstone type of bat that could have helped him. Because we all know that Beatty is not a toolsy guy. He was known for his bat. He was a hit first guy. Maybe his defense got a little bit better with Lindor there. But somebody who has been, a defensive, a solid, sure-handed defender like somebody like Gio Urshela or somebody else at third base, that probably would have helped. And instead of that, we got Joey Wendell, who was DFA'd like a month into the season. We had Zach Short, who was, journeyman, local boy, who cares. Instead, you got, Jose Iglesias, who definitely helped Luis Angel Acuna. And in that stretch when Lindor was out, they basically combined for Lindor with Acuna playing, giving us the power, and then the defense from Jose Iglesias. So basically recreating Lindor in aggregate for a week. But, I feel like that would be a good way to bring up the young guys. The only way to bring back a guy like Iglesias, something has to happen, but it's not going to happen.
Because it'd be too good.
It would be too good. It would be too good. And it seems like it's not a move that is going to be possible considering the contract and the backloaded type of stuff, which again, I understand, but time is running low on that guy. Let's just say that. But I won't go any further. Let's just say. Exactly. People get how about Stearns' choices, a lot of those choices have vanished quickly. And yes, again, that there are guys, out there, who could be veteran pieces to help the young guys if you don't get the better part of that. And I feel like that's the pivot of, it's not really when the Mets bring in veteran guys on 1-year deals, they bring in minor league contracts or stuff like that. You saw it from Jose Iglesias, but you also can see it from there as to help push young guys in the system because they are future assets on the team, whether you play them or not, because you can use those assets in trade for scouting. Like every single piece of this organization will be allocated somehow. Probably everybody on the Mets top 30 prospects list, it will be allocated somehow.
Sorry, BG's comment just completely is out of line. But yeah, that's probably the pivot from Alonso. That's why we're talking about getting a Mountcastle.
Yeah.
To help get that type of veteran.
I mean, let's not forget what the Dodgers did with Shohei Ohtani. They got JD Martinez the year before from getting that bridge. Of course, Mountcastle has 2 years of control, but it also would give you a safety net for Mountcastle. With that last year of control playing in a contract year, if you weren't to get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. But I personally think that at this current moment, with this whole thing with Pete Alonso, and I don't think they want to go through this ever again because they publicly said that this was exhausting and worse than the Soto negotiations. You never know. They're flexible, but when it comes to Mountcastle, that is an honest bat that you could fall back on if you don't get Vlad. But I think that if Vlad becomes available, the Mets are definitely going to put in a push for that because there is a lot of connection. And I think that they should. But you never know. And this is the thing.
That's what I rolled my eyes at.
He thought he'd hit with Short and Wendell. Let's not talk about the pen choices last year. There wasn't much risk in any of these additions. And compared to, this is what I like about Stearns. Compared to what Stearns did, compared to Epler, when he makes a bad decision, he holds himself accountable and gets rid of him. The only guy that wasn't taken out was Adam Ottavino, which, to be honest, like we've said, probably just has dirt on the front office. And to be honest, he most likely will be our bench coach by spring training. Because Gibbons probably, getting older up there. He wants to retire, so Adam Ottavino will be our bench coach. Anyways, guys like Zach Short, guys like Joey Wendell, they were terrible. He held himself accountable, got rid of them because it was flexible. There was no risk. There was no risk whatsoever. Jake Diekman was terrible, got rid of him. Jorge Lopez throws his glove into the stands. Doesn't matter if he was pitching well or not. It's not acceptable. Get rid of him. Adrian Hauser, a guy he traded for, got rid of him.
Yeah.
Who was the other guy? Omar Narvaez was a tied up contract from Billy Epler. Got rid of him.
Yeah, and I think we're losing sight because again, this is just revisionist history here because last year he said it, we all said it was going to be an evaluation year to see who was going to stick around potentially for the long haul and who wasn't. And plans changed. The team outperformed what they thought and what we thought. And the fact that you're not crediting Stearns for putting the right people in place, for getting some of the other guys they did, like Minaya, like Severino, and all the other starting pitchers. And I get you're saying, well, they overachieved last year. If anything, for Severino, I mean, it's kind of the opposite. And you're not going to credit Stearns for getting the right people in place for keeping Severino healthy.
I believe
and
they
if you
did
don't
overachieve. But the 2022 Mets overachieved. They did nothing in the offseason afterwards. They brought back, what was it, Ottavino, signed Narvaez, Danny Mendick, balked on Correa. Maybe got Tommy Pham, who was a good pickup. That was a clutch pickup, I will say that. Especially giving us Jeremy Rodriguez, who I think is a solid prospect. But they didn't really make any impact moves to protect Pete Alonso or protect any of that, and it all faltered because a lot of these guys were in their mid-30s. They were trying to get them to use that athleticism or put the ball in play or the Derek Chavez stuff, which I can't stand.
Who hired Carlos Mendoza, BJ?
Who hired Carlos Mendoza? Exactly. Like, that's what I mean. He chose Mendoza, and everybody was upset with Stearns about hiring Carlos Mendoza, and they wanted Craig Counsell. Where did Craig Counsell go with the Cubs? Nowhere.
Yeah, enough.
That's what I mean. It's like it's all a chain for that. You know,
enough of the revisionist history
for it, in and out.
And also with that comment from before, if you don't think Stearns had any say in the Juan Soto stuff, you're completely out of line, because Stearns is probably the one that he has to be there to sell him on a plan for the organization going forward. It's not like he just had nothing to do with it, and it's just
Soto
Cohen
did say
throwing
he likes
the money.
The future better here, so I don't know. Is that a knock there? Maybe he's just blowing smoke up our ass. Who cares? Juan Soto signed on the dotted line. We don't care. He's here for 15 years.
And Stearns was part of it. I don't want to hear that it was just Cohen. Yeah, Cohen was obviously the big factor in it because of giving the money, but there also has to be a future to sell them on, because if it's just about money, then, you know, a team like the Angels could have threw as much money as they wanted at him, but why would he go there when they don't have any sort of future lined up?
Yeah, I think we're selling. I think we're also just with a lack of there's a lack of information. I feel like people just see David Stearns, and this is not out their own fault, to be honest. I don't blame you for seeing this in the way that with Milwaukee, and he still thinks that he's in Milwaukee. The great things that David Stearns has done, it's not just overspending onto player value. You know, it's not just in you know, that way. There's other single factors that go into what Stearns has been able to do to build sustainable organizations like the Dodgers, but it's going to take a lot longer. Coming in from face value, the business side of baseball, whether you're talking about good investments, short-term, long-term investments for this team, David Stearns has looked at it from, okay, what deserves high risk? What deserves low risk? And that's the best way to, you know, keep things sustainable, keep things flexible. And then once you get that flexible type of culture here, you get that flexible type of system from top to bottom, then you can become the Dodgers. Then you can do that. You know, we're not here to play MLB The Show. You know, we're not here to do that. Yeah, it's just, we're not here to make a team builder. You know, it's about sustainability first. Unless you want to go to the playoffs next year, lose because you're inferior and have a lack of depth, like all of Epler's teams do, and then just completely fall off the map afterwards.
Yeah, and it's what
There
Philip just
definitely
said.
wasn't a GM also in New York who did that this offseason.
Don't even get me started there, but Phillips' comments exactly it. I mean, fans
Yeah,
wanted a smart front office so bad, and now that they have one, there's fans that aren't happy. And for BG's point, yeah, Cohen definitely helped with the culture, but didn't you just say Mendoza was
I
the
think,
key last year?
yeah.
So again, who
No,
hired Mendoza?
that's the thing, you know? And I understand from face value how it looks. I get it. I know it looks like, oh, he's just dumpster diving. He's doing all of this. Things that he has had to do so far in his first 2 years. And it's not like I have agreed with every single move that he has made. But from perspective, there never seems to be a catch as compared to somebody like Billy Epler, as compared to somebody like Brody Van Wagenen, as compared to anybody else, even Sandy Alderson. There's been other, things that we have seen that were not great.
And for M
I
Easy,
think that
sorry, go.
what happened?
No, I just go. I was gonna read a
Yeah,
comment. I was
yeah,
just gonna say M Easy's
yeah.
comment. The Mets are not in a position to do that right now. That's why they
They aren't.
haven't done it. They have to build
Yeah,
up the farm strong enough first.
yeah. That's the thing. They have to keep on building, and I understand. Well, oh, this is going to take 10 years off my life. It's going to take forever. If you want to be the Dodgers, you're going to have to see the first 3 years of Cohen as him waiting for David Stearns. And now the Mets fans are waiting for David Stearns to do what he can do to make them a sustainable organization. Not to mention, I've said this before, with the Mets positional prospects, there's not really many teams. They don't want them. They're
Yeah.
not really that good. They have one in Sproat who I do not want to move unless it's for, a guy that you can't miss. There's no really guy out there you can't miss. Like a guy like Ryan Mountcastle, I'd love to bring him in. I'm not trading Sproat for him. I'm not trading Sproat for him. If they want Sproat, you hang up.
And
I'm also
that's why they
okay
didn't
with
get
getting rid
Crochet.
of any Brody Van Wagenen or
Billy Epler.
Billy Epler draft picks. I'm okay with that because I don't trust their judgment.
Yeah.
So, again, yeah.
That's why you didn't see them land Crochet, because they just didn't have the prospect
No,
ammo to do so.
they didn't. They just didn't. And there's concerns throughout everything, and maybe it does pan out. But right now you're looking at it from a very low ceiling with a lot of the pieces in this organization. Now, the first draft, I think they did a really good job with that. Hopefully, it amounts to something. But it's going to take a while. It is. Waiting to build up prospects does interfere with the prime of guys like Lindor, is all I'm saying. You added Juan Soto. So, I mean, I don't know how much you can say. I mean, yes, I know everybody wants an all-star team around him, but, it's whatever.
Yeah, but I agree with that point. Like, I'm not disagreeing that you do ideally want to win while Lindor is in his prime, but you also have to realize there's a difference between what we want and what's realistic.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you don't realize that, MEZ. I'm just saying for most fans that they have to realize that it's great to want to get some of these players that are on the trade market, but they don't have the prospects to do it. They don't,
Yeah.
and it sucks, but that's just the reality of it, unfortunately. And unfortunately, he's inheriting a dumpster fire, like Philip said before, and it's just going to take time to get there.
Yeah. In hindsight, who did more damage to the franchise, Epler or Van Wagenen? I would say it was Brody because the amount of dealing he did of the entire farm system that, again, wasn't great for crap. And every single piece of it was just so bad. Not to mention the amount of shit that he talked publicly. It just was so insufferable in that way. And there was a few good moves that he made, but again, just like Epler, there always is a catch. There always was a catch. There was always something that turned the wrong way. When you get to the catch with a Stearns move, especially with the financial flexibility you have from Cohen, he cuts it loose. He's not going to let it spread throughout any longer. You know, you can't let the tumor spread because then you end up with the New York Rangers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a whole
Pete
separate
hasn't
rabbit
signed
hole.
with another team. He wants to remain a Met. Yeah, seems like he does. I mean, directly from the Boris mouthpiece himself, John Heyman saying he desperately wants to be a Met. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the problem is, Turo, it's really just such a big domino effect to where you
Yeah.
have Brody who just completely depleted the farm, like you said, even though it wasn't that great, but he just depleted it and left everything so barren to where there was not a lot left for Epler even, and then Epler just continued to destroy the ship here, and it just was a huge domino effect. I think the reason, though, you argue Brody more is because of the fact that, one, he was here longer, which makes this the obvious, and two,
Yeah.
there were pieces, Zach Wheeler, that he
Yeah.
shouldn't have let go, that he did let
Yeah.
go of, to where you look back, imagine Zach Wheeler on this team right now.
Yeah, the benefit of exactly. The benefit of the doubt when you look at it is Brody was here with the Wilpon era, and Billy was here with the Cohen era. Cohen had a little bit more resources, and there still was repercussions with things like that for sustainable winning. So you can look at it from, Epler being Epler for just being a product of Steve Cohen's money. You can say that also with Devil's Advocate that Brody was a product of, the whole Brody was a product of, what's it called? Bad ownership, basically, just the Wilpon era. But the way that he kind of just publicly said, the come and get us, and then also talked that shit about Wheeler. I mean, it was such a bad look that it just made it all rotten. Like that was it. He's like, oh, we were able to turn in 2 halves for Zach Wheeler. Meanwhile, he turns around, brings in Michael Wacha, who couldn't stay healthy at the point, and a washed up 20-win Cy Young Award winner from years before in Rick Porcello with that ideal money that they would have given to Wheeler. Like that's the thing. It's just like the thought process, and then also the public thought process that was just so toxic and just disgusting. Like it looking back, it was just so bad. Like it was just bad look publicly.
That, and we're not even bringing up the manager he hired too.
Was that him?
Brody Van Wagenen with Mickey Callaway.
Was that him?
Yeah.
Was it
Wait.
him?
Oh, I actually might be wrong about that.
No.
Wait.
Yeah.
Did he hire?
No. He didn't. No. It was Sandy, I think.
Oh yeah, I got that. Yeah, no, that's my mistake. I got that mixed up. I thought that he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he fired Mickey Callaway after his first season.
I was gonna say, because Mickey was 2018. Yeah, Brody was 2019. Yeah, okay. Yeah. That's my fault,
but
guys.
also Sandy had also a history of hiring losers. They brought him in, hired Jared Porter. What happened with that? Zach Scott happened with that. There was also another thing about somebody in the organization who had allegations, and he like snapped at the media or something for saying like not everybody needs to be taken out. All right, I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. Brody hired Rojas.
That's right. Yeah,
Matt.
Okay, so I got that mixed up.
Yeah,
and Beltran. Yeah.
But him, the combination in 2019, even though they were able to do better for what they had, considering what they were able to do, the combination of Mickey Callaway and Brody Van Wagenen was a clown show. It was actually a legitimate clown show that I'm glad that got dissolved before they could even hurt anything else. And I'm glad that the last year that Brody was here was a 60-game season, because I feel like he would have wrecked even more if it was a full season. Because, the pandemic kind of saved the Mets, believe it or not, because of the sale of the team. the lower of the price because of the pandemic. So, you know, that's the one thing with the Mets being, before all the ownership came in, being the Antichrist and being benefiting from the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's crazy. Yeah. Zach Scott low-key cooked in the 2021 draft. I mean, he with he did a, like, I mean, he really, I'm pretty sure he drafted like really, really well with Boston. Like he did a really good job with Boston, and some of those assets that they traded off where they were able to get like other guys, because he did have a history of decent guys bringing in. Yeah, he cooked in that draft, but then he decided to cook himself and start driving. So what else can he do? And now he's basically a Twitter GM now.
Yeah, now he's an SNY analyst.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to the gates of hell, folks. We've been waiting for you. That's a tough panel. Let's just say that. That is a tough panel. You had Salicata, Andy Martino, Jim Duquette.
The GM version of Trevor Bauer.
Yeah. Woo! Yikes. Yeah. Jeez.
I mean, yeah, though that's just what we're. It's just what it ties everything together too. That just like Stearns here too is, again, the culture is just so much better, and if you don't think Stearns has anything to do with it, you're just out of line.
Yeah, listen, I think that it all really just has to go with how it is viewed as. Fans want results. That's kind of it. And, when they don't get those results, they want to find a way to get those results even better. And when you're seeing what the Dodgers are doing, it's frustrating. But right now, whenever I look at the Dodgers bring guys in, I know that eventually we will be there. It's going to take time. But at the trajectory that they are going, with the sustainability you get from David Stearns, always having his options open, making savvy deals, and then you have the resources of Steve Cohen, you're going to build something here. You're just going to have to make it, something open to the public. And then maybe, just maybe, you wouldn't have to sign guys like Juan Soto to $765 million with elevations to over $800. And maybe you would have some deferred money in there, like the Dodgers do it, and we can piss everybody off. And that's when the league will step in, because if the Mets do it, it'll be illegal. And to be honest, when we deferred payments for Sean Manaea, I think we can all agree that ruined baseball, right? That ruined baseball.
That was terrible.
Easily. Bullpen looking good. Now we need batting. Absolutely. We all know who's on the radar there. We've talked about in the past. For those of you in the chat, 58% of you are saying it is a top 10 bullpen. Middle 10 is 38%. 3% of you are saying bottom 10 bullpen. But I'm going to guess that majority, or that minority of 3%, are the ones who believe that we need a new closer. And we got to bring in Dylan Betances. And we got to bring in all of these guys to come in here, because Edwin Diaz is no good. So it's whatever. We'll see what happens. There's higher expectations. James McCann can play first. I mean, statistically, he was great at first base. Whenever he was at first base, he was hitting well. Better Mets career stats at first base than Pete Alonso. Just saying. Not coping at all, right? Not coping at all. No, James McCann, I actually, that will probably go down as one of the worst signings in Mets history. Probably one, I hated it from the very beginning, and everybody wanted to, shoot me. But at the end of the day, I would have bit the bullet for a Real Muto thing, but he's not aging well either. So, it was all really about, bringing it in for Alvarez, because we all know that he was going to be the future eventually at the trajectory that he was going. But at the moment, he was like 18 years old or 19 years old. So, whatever. Never forget that Atlanta series in 2020. I like to forget all of 2021. I really just like to blank it out completely. And to be honest, the only thing I have fondly of 2021 was first half was Jacob deGrom show every 5 days. And then Javi Baez kept it entertaining. So
And Janeshwi Fargas.
And Janeshwi Fargas. Can't forget about Janeshwi Fargas and the 68 other Mets that were along for the ride that they had to claim on waivers because everyone was dying.
Yeah, and Jonathan VR.
Jonathan VR, Daddy VR, as we like to call him over here. Pete Alonso prediction. At the rate it's going. I mean, listen, on our podcast this week, I said I think Pete Alonso is gone. And now, 48 hours later, magically, we're back at the table now. So you know what? Who knows? Pete Alonso will sign with a team. There's my prediction. There it is. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know what it will be. But if the Mets do come to an agreement, I do think that it will be probably, if I were to make a guess, 3 years, $78 million, and deferrals that can bring it up to $100 million. Something like that. I don't know if I were to guess. But I don't know how to look at it because of what they're far apart on. But if we get another, I mean, I feel like we say this over and over again, but it's like you got to cut it off somewhere. Somewhere you got to cut it off. I don't want to be talking to him during spring training because it's just going to make everything worse. And we're going to be talking about, Pete Alonso, the loser with RISP next year of how awful he is because it cut into his spring training time. So they got to cut it off somehow. But Pete Alonso has been unsigned by another team, and that's the reason as to why the Mets have the cards here. And they can keep doing this, and they can be looking to improve the team with the financial flexibility. I mean, they have everything from all aspects. And, I was a vesting option or mutual option in there. Sure. Why not? A vesting option that makes it become a player option, maybe. I don't know, something like that. They might figure something out. But you never know. We'll see. We're all here for the ride. Maybe it changes. Maybe there's some kind of bar fight that happens in the Mets front office tomorrow. Like, who knows? The drama just keeps going. I wish the Mets would put out a public deadline. It seems like they already did. It seems like they did, and they were like, you got to make a decision sooner. We're going to do something here. And then you involve the Blue Jays and the Angels, and it seems like they've stowed away. So, I mean, we all saw that this was going to happen. But apparently, there's some Mets fans out there who blindly look at it and say that home run in Milwaukee is going to get him $200 million. No, it's not. Not going to happen. But hey, what can you do?
Yeah, I just wish that they would publicly just give a date to and just be like, this is the day, and if not, then we're moving on.
I mean, there was a report. If you are a Blue Jays fan, I can catch you up on something. There was a report on a certain podcast. Somebody went on and said it was Dave Schwartz. I think I talked about this on our podcast a few days ago. That the Blue Jays had a deal with Scott Boras, and Pete Alonso nixed it. So he just tossed it out, and then he also went on to say that he wants to go back to New York. And I guess that turned out to be true 2 days later because we're getting a report from John Heyman that it says he desperately wants to come back, and that's a direct Boras mouthpiece. We also had something from Brandon Nimmo as well, saying that I've talked to him. He wants to come back. He's also a Boras client. So it's like you do have the connection there of like, okay, Pete, maybe he does want to come back. But it's going to have to be on the Mets' terms because they hold all the cards. They hold all 52 cards. They even hold the jokers as well. So 54. Yeah, that's how I look at it.
Yeah. It's just what we said earlier too, that if the Blue Jays, if he really wanted to go to the Blue Jays or any of these other teams, the deal would have been done by now with another one. And
Yeah.
I actually have to get going as I wrap up my point here. But yeah, we would have heard that by now, and it would have been even the Angels, which we've heard about, like a 4-year offer and stuff.
Yeah.
Something would have been done if he really wanted to be elsewhere. So I'm
Yeah.
just tired of hearing about it.
Yeah. I'm actually going to wrap it up here because I was going to go an hour and 30 and we went an hour 45. So I think we'll actually wrap it up here. So that's pretty good timing. For those of you in here who don't know, even though we haven't really been talking about it that much, Ryne Stanek, Rewind, you can hear our analysis. We'll also talk about it on the podcast on Monday. For those of you in here, make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel. Turn on post notifications. We go live for Major League Mets news, such as Ryne Stanek. And also, we are live every 7 o'clock on Monday Eastern Time. And then, of course, follow us on X and on TikTok. I will make sure to put the links in the description for Mets Central, where Evan is affiliated for. For those of you who want to follow my co-hosts individually, links are in the description. And yeah, we will be back for any other news. Other than that, we'll be live for our podcast. And then, clips throughout the week, stuff like that. So one more time, Mets re-sign right-handed pitcher Ryne Stanek to a 1-year, $4.5 million contract to load up the bullpen once again. We'll see what happens with Alonso. We are all here for it. But as for it and everything else that it continues to be, it will always be, let's go Mets. And we'll see you guys next time.